Happy Friday, November 10th, 2017. The Daredevil Danger and All Out Show-Off are scheduled to arrive for me today, so videos for those will be out sometime this weekend. I'm still kind of debating on layout for both of them. I really like the stronger layouts I've used on the Daredevils before, but I'd really like to see what it looks like with my, my kind of typical test layout. And on the other hand, the All Out's kind of begging for a stronger layout, but the numbers are really similar to the original Rocket, which is one of my favorite balls of all time, so I kind of want to check that out too. So if I remember right though, I had a 4.5-inch pin on my Rocket, so that might work out. I might end up just having to do something incredibly scientific, like, putting my fingers on the ball in different places and just see what feels right and do that. So I'm expecting both of these to go into my league bag, so they're not a couple balls that I'm just kind of getting to make the videos for and then see if they fit or not. Also, this is the day that the Hyroad Nano is available to the staffers to order, so that'll be done as soon as they put it up on the website, and will likely be here about the same time next week. So big couple videos next week too. There's quite a bit of anticipation for this one, so looking forward to that. I'm going to add something to the podcast this week. It's going to be a regular segment called What's in the Bag. I have a lot of people ask me what I'm throwing on a weekly and daily basis when I take to tournaments and stuff, because a lot of you realize that it's one thing to make a video for something and like it, but it's a completely different thing when it comes to trying to find out where a ball fits and trying to gauge regular use or how frequently that ball is going to come out of the bag. So especially with me going through so many balls, oftentimes I have a lot of balls that I really do like, but they just kind of work their way out of the bag as soon as something new comes out. So when most people go to buy a ball, the intent's for it to be a daily driver in league, or something that sees action on a weekly, daily or weekly basis. Now, other people will buy something knowing that it's just going to sit the majority of the time, but will be very useful when its time comes. Now, for me, there's only enough room in the bags for stuff I know will have a good chance of getting used. If it sits for a couple weeks in favor of something else, or it doesn't stay out very long when I try to throw it, that lets me know it's time for it to come out. So at the same time, I still want to do well. I don't want to just rotate stuff out when its turn comes. I mean, whenever something new comes out, I want to throw it and promote it, but if it looks really silly when you're throwing something new just to throw it and it doesn't go well because it's not matching up with you or not matching up with the conditions, which in turn makes you look like an idiot who doesn't know how to read ball reaction. So I'm just going to use what works. Somebody watching me goes and buys a Hyroad Pearl because they see me doing well with it. That's still a sale. Just because it didn't come out 2 weeks ago doesn't mean that or just because something else came out 2 weeks ago doesn't mean that I'm just going to go whole hog on promoting it, unless it happens to be something that I think that you like better. So alright, rambling off, what's in the bag. My sport bag has remained the same for several months now. It's unlikely to change anytime soon, so I probably won't talk about it again unless something interesting happens. It's the No Rules Exist, Daredevil Trick, and the Hectic. The cover on the Exist and Trick is probably one of my favorite ones out there right now. The Exist covers the soup, the Trick covers everything medium, and the Hectic's for like really, really super late burn. So I have several other balls in the bag that will come out in between the Trick and the Hectic, like the Marvel Pearl and the Hustle. So I normally take my sport bag and then I make up one more bag full of 3 of kind of my regular use balls. I also have a rule that I never take more than 6 balls somewhere. It's one thing to have options, but sometimes too many options can just cause some confusion and indecision. As long as you have a good plan, you make sure the basics are covered, you should be fine. I've never gone to a tournament and done poorly and gotten done with it and thought, well, I just didn't match up, or I just didn't have any kind of a look. I've always had a look or several of them with something. It's never been a reaction issue. It's always come down to execution, so I'm very confident in my decision-making abilities when it comes to choosing equipment. The Exist doesn't see a lot of action because I don't ever see the kind of length and volume that it needs. The lanes are dry enough to get me to the Hectic. On the other hand, other people are lofting 10 feet of gutter, so most of the time my most important bag is filled with my regular use stuff, and given that it gets regular use, I'm very familiar and comfortable with all of them. This is yet again another reason, going back to what I said earlier about just not rotating stuff out, and it's another reason just not to throw new stuff because it's new. There's a plan on top of a plan that's on top of another plan, so everything I do has been thought about and examined and considered and debated about from several different angles. Getting to my regular bags, what I carry with me to league and regular house shot tournaments right now are both my Hustle Inks, my Marvel Pearl, my Hyroad Pearl, my Intense, and the Matchup Hybrid. My third Hyroad has been retired and is sitting on my desk at work. It was a great ball that scored me a 300 and a 1050 plus set for a 4-game league set over the summer, and now it's a great air freshener. The Code Red has also been moved out, and it's kind of in limbo. It's one of those balls where I usually have a good look with it, but I usually have a better look with something else, so it's just kind of sitting there for the time being. It may work its way back in, but, you know, who knows. My No Rules Pearl is in hard limbo, meaning it's one spot out of the bag, but it always goes with me to bigger tournaments because it always makes me money. Depending on the conditions, too, if I know ahead of time, it'll either replace the Exist or the Hectic in my sport bag. If I know it's going to be long and heavy, out comes the Hectic. If I know it's going to be kind of medium-ish, the Exist will come out. It's kind of like that special ball that I don't want to use too much, so that it's just fresh and ready to go when it's go time. So everything else is retired or gone. I have a rack in the basement where some sentimental stuff sits. Should have considered all those S's right there when I was writing this, but most of the time stuff cracks from lack of use and ends up in a dumpster. Now, quick thought while I'm on that topic here. Here's a few tips on preventing cracking and why stuff cracks. Make sure the lateral pitches in your fingers are at least 3/4 of an inch apart. So, you know, when you drill holes down on something round, if you drill them straight, they're just going to go in towards each other. They need to be far enough apart to where you have that strength of that bridge in there. If they're too close, then that's going to create a weak point. So to keep that bridge strong, you want to make sure that they're at least 3/4 of an inch, you know, 3/4 of an inch apart. So make sure the finger holes are also beveled. Even if you use grips, having that hard edge there can cause chipping and just general weakening of the area around the fingers. That's sometimes where you see kind of that ring cracking that's around the finger holes. If it hits something wrong enough times, having that edge beveled out spreads out the shock a little bit better instead of everything just hitting on that one sharp point at the top of the hole there. So obviously don't subject it to extreme temperatures or extreme temperature differences. Everything's a different density in a bowling ball, and having so many different things swell and contract. Having a great day here. It's a little too early. I need a coffee or something. I need food. That's what I need. I'm frickin' starving. Let's see. Having so many things swelling and shrinking at different rates will make something give eventually. I mean, even excess glue, when you're gluing in the grips, it gets in the pores of the ball and it expands and contracts at a different rate than the ball does too. And so if you have this getting in the pores of the ball, it can actually crack out the fingers too, just the glue if you use too much of it. So the biggest tip I can give you, though, is just to use it, or at least rotate it around once a week or something if it's sitting on the floor. I mean, if it sits in one place for too long, it'll crack. It might be sooner, it might be later, but the core will settle and eventually the ball will crack. So sometimes cracking is the result of a bad batch, sometimes it cured too quickly or something. But I have to say that the vast majority of the time that a ball cracks on somebody, it's because it's your fault. I mean, just honestly enough. The vast majority of the time that I've had my own stuff crack, it's just because it's been sitting there forever. You know, if it's a new in box, if it hasn't been drilled, no worries. But I mean, once the holes are in there, then you've created these stress points or these fracture points. That's why you see, when you see cracking, it starts at a hole and goes from there. So I've had, like I said, I've had quite a few crack on me, but it's just because they've sat in one place for 3 months and haven't gotten any use. So alright, anyway, now that we caught that rabbit, we're back to the bag. So most use right now is going to the Intense and Matchup Hybrid. The Intense I just can't keep out of my hands. I really didn't think I'd get to use it this often, but it's been an honest game changer for me. Like, I'm very cerebral and I have a good eye for ball reaction, a good feel for shape and its effect on reaction and carry. And so most of the time I want to control the reaction. So typically I go for weaker balls. Now, the first couple weeks I had it, I fought with. I couldn't roll it like everything else because it was so strong. So either I just end up dumping it all the time, or I just never get it out of the bag. So, I mean, it rolls so well though that I just keep getting it out every week on the off chance it might work. And in doing so, I've slowly changed my mechanics to kind of make it work, and the result's been fairly surprising. I mean, I already get out of the ball pretty clean, so most of the time that makes me grab it or slow everything down so that I don't get too firm and just sail it through the break point. Now the Intense just won't go through the break point though. I mean, so basically I've been able to relax everything. It rolls so strong and the reaction is so clean and consistent and firm that I've been able to cut my rev rate down, which allows me to play closer to the friction on the outside, play a little bit further right, and also kind of play to my strengths. You know, it wasn't very long after getting into bowling that my friends introduced me to sport tournaments, and I really got into tougher conditions and kind of built my game around that. So I like being firm through the middle or fading stuff through the middle and getting it to a certain point and then just having it kind of sit there. Not quite like a hook set type of deal, but I like controlling my angles. It's hard to do on a house shot usually because it's really soupy in the middle and it's dry on the outside. So playing inside is tough because there's not enough friction to get the ball. There's not enough friction there to get the ball to face up quite right at the pocket. On the other hand, getting it to the friction on the outside results in playing way more lane than you need to, in addition to using more angle issues with the ball either hooking too soon if you get it out there too quick, or just burning up trying to make the turn back from that, you know, that severe of an angle. So now the Intense just chews everything. Now that I've gotten comfortable with what it does, I found I'm kind of able to trick everything else with my wrist now. I'm still kind of working out my other mechanics. Sometimes I get a little too fast or a little bit too slow, and my body just kind of, like I said, I've got a really good eye for things, and so my body just tries to, or my head tries to make me do things that I don't want to do, and things kind of get out of whack without me really realizing that they're getting out of whack. I just kind of automatically start doing stuff. So you know, I probably could have figured this out beforehand, but this ball just fits everything about the way that I like to do so well that it's kind of unlocked some abilities I either didn't know I had or that my head just wasn't comfortable enough to let me do with other equipment. Bottom line is, if I get too clean or too easy with stuff, I have carry issues because I have angle issues because I won't just trust my stuff. So I always play to allow for bad shots rather than trying to take advantage of the good ones. And part of that's just lack of practice. I mean, when you can't trust your execution, it just mucks everything else up from there. So I've been in this state of general frustration for a long time at my own inconsistency and kind of stubbornness against allowing my game to evolve. I keep looking back saying I used to be good at this, or I used to do this and it worked, but everything in bowling continues to advance and change, and I haven't really been going with the flow. I've been trying to throw the ball like I used to throw it and remembering the success I had with it back then. But I mean, you know, as I continue to learn, instead of allowing that to affect what I do, I just try to fit it in with what I've already been doing. And as you age, your capabilities change as well. Now, I'm only 36, so it's not like I'm falling apart or anything, but things are changing. I mean, balls are way stronger than they were just 5 years ago, and I think they're a lot stronger than people really realize. I mean, I remember being able to just hammer on stuff at the bottom 10 years ago and just having it zing down the lane and then turn sideways. So now if you do that, the ball's picking up and going. Even the weaker stuff is designed to roll earlier and, you know, control the mid lane and be, you know, roll and rev stronger and everything like that. So, you know, instead of retooling my game, I've been trying to change ball selection or work layouts or angles or, you know, where I play on the lane, or basically everything else, but just adjusting to the way that bowling is right now. So now another school of thought is that you really shouldn't have to adjust to a ball. The point of having several different balls is to avoid having to change your mechanics, but the balls now are strong to the point that they do the work, so just let them do the work. I mean, I had flashes of the same thing with the Sherlock, but it was just way too stupidly strong to even consider, especially since managing transition is one of my bigger focuses. I've always had a habit of overthinking things, so I'm one of those people that's a way better coach than a participant. I can process all the information, give it to somebody else that can just go do it, while, you know, keeping their mind clear. My mind's constantly going and constantly turning, considering so many factors that I have trouble just getting the approach, clearing my head, or shutting all that stuff off just long enough to make the shot. So confidence in what I'm doing or in a decision is really huge for me. So getting great ball reaction can shoot me to the moon, and questionable or tight ball reaction can just completely shut me down. So the Intense, though, has been a big key to a big lock in my head that's been rusted shut for a while, and now that I'm getting to practice and getting to more tournaments and generally just being able to participate again, this is something that I really needed to have happen from a confidence standpoint. Alright, so anyway, the matchup hybrid is along the same lines. It's slow on the revving, and so sometimes it catches a little bit too much oil and throws up everywhere, but it's so clean across the board that a simple adjustment gets me right back to where I want to be. It's an insanely readable ball. It's going to be a lock in my bag for a long time, just like the Intense. Now, the Marble Pearl is a ball that's basically impossible to miss the pocket with, but it can be too smooth at times. And likewise, the Hyroad Pearl lately has been giving me angle issues. I think they're both due for some maintenance, though. I mean, they've had so much use. It's just loads and loads of constant use, and I think they could probably benefit from a detox and a little surface TLC. So, as far as the inks go, they aren't the first balls out of the bag anymore, but they're my go-to balls. Usually the first option when transition shows up. They're so good from deep. They clear the front so easy and are consistent and firm on the back end. They have a little trouble getting going when the shot's fresh, but as soon as some track friction as soon as some friction shows up, then they're just better from deep than they are from straight for me. As soon as I have some friction show up that gets them to move a little bit earlier, they just really like angles. So I'm having trouble figuring out what's going to come out for the Danger and the All Out, though. Now it partially depends on what I see out of them, but I'd be really stunned if they're not both absolute house shot killers. You know, at this point, I'm looking at the Hyroad Pearl and my 5 1/4 inch pen ink. There's a huge amount of overlap there to begin with, believe it or not. Neither of them are quite enough on the fresh shot, and my 4-inch pen ink is a better look than either of those when the shot starts to transition. So I've been able to stick with it through the end of the night whenever it comes out. So I try to use those two, but I just really haven't had the need to. I might still have some overlap somewhere else that makes me maybe look at the Marble Pearl, but we'll see what happens, and I'll kind of let you know next week. I'll also likely have to look for a spot for the Hyroad Nano, then a couple weeks after that. Then we're going to have some serious decisions when it comes to the Sonic. So that's going to mess everything up, but in a really fantastic way, I think. So I think that's probably going to do it for today. This section will take up the entire podcast every week. I just want to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and you know, chased a few rabbits in the process. So next week we'll probably have a lot of World Series bowling talk about. I'll have another review for the Hyroad Nano. A couple weeks after that, we'll have one for the Sonic. So I should have a lot of stuff coming up, so make sure that your notifications to the channel are on, because there's going to be a lot to see over the next month, or really 3 weeks. There should be a lot of videos going up. One last thing here, I am going to Two Harbors, Minnesota for the first 2 weeks of December for training for my new job, so I haven't exactly figured out how I'm going to do things there. I'll still be available. I'm taking my little Chromebook here with me, so I'll be able to answer questions and comments and everything. I just won't be able to upload anything for a couple weeks, but after all the craziness that I'm going to have over the next 3-ish weeks here, it might be a good break. But for now, the Danger and All Out videos are this weekend, Hyroad Nano next weekend, Sonic 2 weeks after that, right before I leave, and as always, we will see you next Friday.